Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Money League. Joining me today is Dr. Alfred Danda and our very own Mr. Mills. How are you doing, Mills?
I am good. How are you doing today? Hello, everyone.
Dr. Danda, how's your day been so far?
It's been good. Busy day at the office, seeing patients as usual, but I saved up just a bit of energy to
Yeah.
chat for the next 15, 20 minutes or so with you guys and talk about what's going on that's exciting.
Awesome. Uh, Again, welcome everybody. Subscribe to the channel if you have not been here before. This is TFT Football. We cover Premier League, La Liga, Premier and a whole, and of course like random injuries around Europe, MLS, and women's soccer as well. Subscribe to the channel. Hey mom, subscribe to the channel. And let's get started. Okay, we had like a special guest join us earlier. Joining us now from the motherland of football. He's an analyst for UK Athletic, fantasy football slash soccer savant, head of the Premier Injuries, and he's a Newcastle United fan. Welcome to the show, Ben Dinnery. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you. Very well. Yeah, and I much appreciate the invite to come across and speak on your show. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Awesome. So let's chat with your Newcastle United. Were you a Alan Shearer fan? How did you become a Newcastle United fan?
Yeah, well, absolutely. If you're from Newcastle, which I am, born and bred, then Alan Shearer is worshipped here on Tyneside. And yeah, look, like I say, if you're born in Newcastle, you don't really have much choice. So my father was a Newcastle United supporter. As soon as I was old enough, we had season tickets for St. James's Park.
Nice.
And that lifelong love affair, the ups and downs, the peaks and the troughs, the good times and the bad. Yeah, we've been through a lot in my short life. But it looks like things are on the up at this moment in time when there's really some exciting times in Newcastle.
Yep, I think you guys are in the up. I think top four finish is highly likely this year. So let's get started. So the New Year games and the Boxing Day games are done. A lot of exciting games here and there. Tell us more about like your analysis or like your observation in the last 2 weeks of like multiple matchups.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my primary focus is in around availability, injury burden. It's become a very hot topic of conversation in recent times, and you just have to look at what's happening across at Chelsea with Graham Potter to understand how much of an impact injuries to key players within certain squad members have become, like I say, such a massive talking point. And of course, we're following on the back of that mid-season World Cup unprecedented tournament out in Qatar. Everybody's sort of waiting and wondering to see what type of impact that will have on players, during the second half of the season, because, we went into it with almost a fixture schedule which was congested, but in the second half of the season, those fixtures are coming even faster. It's going to be difficult. Squads will have to be managed very, very carefully. And it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. And yeah, I mean, it's for me, if it's your passion, it's what you're interested in. I love that because it's, like I say, it's an opportunity to see how managers deal with their players and how different squad depths are being able to cope with the burden of picking up those injuries.
But don't you think like the top clubs have a better bench strength? Do they get to do they have an advantage in the second half because of the World Cup, especially with the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, like the Champions League going to start soon? Like, is that going to like affect certain teams? Or are the top teams probably going to like kind of like not going to care about the FA Cup and the other cup? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, of course, those teams that have got bigger and better and deeper squads are going to be able to cope, and tolerate the physical demands of domestic football and however way that presents itself. Yeah, so they may have a slight advantage over those who are maybe are lacking in that department. Maybe those who don't have that financial clout to be able to buy big and build that bench. But like I say, I referenced the likeness of Chelsea, just at the head of the show. They're a team who's currently have 10 players currently sidelined. A lot of those are long-term injuries, which are going to impact massively, on Graham Potter's ability to be able to pick a team, to consistently perform optimally. And that's going to be very difficult. And to this point, he hasn't been able to get his team to really, play to their full potential because of, like I say, the loss to those key players.
So, like you mentioned, like Chelsea is having this ravage of injuries, and they're not even able to get their top players out there. Are there other injuries we need to monitor in terms of other teams? I know like Man City is kind of most likely healthy, but what are the other injuries we need to keep track of, like other teams which are getting affected by injuries?
Yeah, I think, Arsenal, who are flying at the top of the league at present, they obviously lost Gabriel Jesus to a knee ligament problem at the World Cup, probably going to keep him out, from in the region of maybe 3 to potentially even 4 months. I don't think they have a really big and strong enough squad to carry, any more injuries to key players within that team. Certainly, if they were to lose maybe Eddie Nketiah or maybe Gabriel Martinelli, we know that Emile Smith-Rowe is just returning from a groin problem. So that's big. And even my boys, Newcastle, I think we're still heavily reliant on Callum Wilson, although Alexander Isak did return in the FA Cup at the weekend. So that, it's going to be a big thing for Eddie Howe to try and keep those two players fit and available. Chris Wood is, performed admirably in their absence in games, prior to the World Cup and after that. But like I say, if we lose too many players and we have a dip in form to the likes of Miguel Almiron and Fabian Shaw, then I can see us dropping off. But, at the other end of the table, we've seen Dominic Calvert-Lewin return for the Toffees. He's going to be massive for Everton because that's what they're really lacking. They need a goal scorer. That's been evident, over the last maybe 14 to 15 months where he's been struggling to get that form and fitness. So I think he's going to be, pivotal to their survival hopes. And Nottingham Forest, they've carried 1 or 2 injuries, but we've seen, Steve Cooper went out in the summer and he I think there was around 20 plus players brought into that squad. And they've been able to sort of cope with those so far, put a couple of decent runs together. But like I say, if they pick up any more injuries to key players, they could be another team that starts to struggle.
Yep. I think the World Cup's had an effect, even with the players playing in the World Cup and players not playing in the World Cup. I think it's having different effects. So is the injury like going to affect, like, does it dictate any of the transfer market happening right now? I know Chelsea is like all in and Joao Felix, I think they already signed him. So is that going to like push certain teams to like sign like more expensive players or like pay extra for like a normal player?
Yeah, I mean, the January transfer window inherently anyway, there's always a premium attached to that, particularly if you want to buy those, those elite, those upper end higher players. And particularly if you're a big club or, if you have the financial power of, say, the Newcastle United, in essence, that's always going to put a little bit on that transfer budget. But yeah, of course, if teams are losing key players at this stage of the season and they're going to be on the sidelines for a significant period, then, managers will be scrambling, to have a look around, Europe and the rest of the world to potentially sort of bring in replacements with that. The window's open throughout that January period, and I would expect clubs to be scanning and identifying targets right up until that deadline day. It's not an ideal line mark because, like I say, you play a premium, but the reward is such for staying in the Premier League. The money that this league attracts means that you really have to go all out and to try and survive and maintain, because like I say, there's a big pot of gold at the end of that rainbow.
Yep. And that's one of the main reasons our show is called the Money League. And I'm pretty excited about that. So let's talk about my team, Man United. Of course, I'm super attached to the team. We've not had a great, probably 10 years after Alex Ferguson retired. Looks like, what are your thoughts on the new policy? So I don't know if it's true, but I did read reports that the $200,000 policy, they're not going to pay any player more than that. Is that real, or how is that going to like impact like any of the transfer market for the United?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing, particularly if Manchester United hope or want to compete, with those best teams and for the best players, not only within the Premier League but within European football as well. You've seen the likes of Manchester City, you've seen what Chelsea have spent, and now you've got Newcastle United, who've got very, very deep pockets. So I think it's admirable. We've seen that with Liverpool, who've been fairly set in terms of having that transfer budget or policies in place, but ultimately money talks these days. And we've seen a move away from maybe those old school loyalties of players and players maybe coming and using clubs as stepping stones and using to showcase things. That now if you do have those rigid financial restrictions in place, and somebody else is prepared to go over and above that, your Paris Saint-Germain's, Newcastle United's, your Real Madrid's, even your Barcelona's, even under the FFP, then it's going to be difficult to attract those. And yes, look, Manchester United have that heritage, they have that tradition, but like I say, sometimes it's not just about that, and unfortunately it's a world where people are very much attracted with the finer things that come along with football, and i.e. that that salary.
I think Manchester City kind of changed the tune back in 2010 is when they started signing players left and right, and now like most teams are in that mode. Another United topic. I know they're trying to sign this striker from Benfica. Like, he was like a Premier League flop. Like, why are they trying to sign him? And is it like something to do with injury scare for United, or is it just like a desperate move to add another forward to the team?
Yeah, is it Wout Weghorst? Is that who it?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think from the outside looking in, he doesn't evidently look like the type of player that could sort of fit seamlessly into that United team. But if you look at what Erik Ten Hag is trying to do, and they're looking at the philosophies that he's looking to implement, and particularly if you're looking at a striker who presses and really works hard and plays on the front foot, then Wout Weghorst does tick a lot of boxes. And as a short-term fix, it could be a win-win. Of course, United lost Ronaldo.
I think that's for the good, though. I think losing Ronaldo is good.
Yeah, look, I mean, he certainly divided opinion on his, on his second coming at United, and but it just does leave them a little bit lightweight in attack. I think the form of Marcus Rashford has certainly helped in recent times. But can Anthony Martial be relied upon to, stay fully fit from now until the end of the season? Well, history would tell us that probably not. So it's always better if you can bring somebody in, and maybe as a backup. We're not saying that Weghorst is going to come in and start every game, but if it's an opportunity to maybe rest Anthony Martial in certain games, then look, why not? I'm always willing to give the benefit of the doubt, and like I say, while it evidently doesn't seem like a good natural fit, let's see if he does arrive, what he brings and how he performs, and judge him after that.
100%. Talking about the other red team, I know Liverpool's having defensive issues with injuries. Virgil van Dijk is probably out for 2 to 4 months. Do you have any updates on him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it shouldn't be as long as that. Ideally, I think I was hoping maybe in the region more around about a 6-week turnaround. But we know with hamstring injuries inherently, high re-injury, high recurrence rates. So you need to be very careful in terms of, rushing players back. And it's an area of the team where, Liverpool are fairly well catered for if everybody's fit. Ibrahima Konate is now back, and Joel Matip. You can stick Joe Gomez in there. So there are options, and there's no need necessarily for Jurgen Klopp to rush and force things too much. But of course, outside influencing factors, will determine that, and the pressures of maybe not getting results together, could force the manager's hand a little bit down the line. We're talking about a very time-crunched environment when players are out, particularly key players and high-status players like Virgil van Dijk.
Mhm. And they're currently sitting sixth in the table. So maybe for a top four push towards the end of the season, they would need him. Uh, so I did hear this rumor that the PSG owner is looking to buy Tottenham. Is it just like smoke, or is it like, is there something to that?
I mean, it's something. Look, I'll stick with injuries because I tend
Okay,
to,
just kidding.
stick
Just
with
kidding.
what. Yeah, I mean, look, the problem is, and it's particularly around this time of year again around transfer. If if all of those stories and all of those rumors became, if they were true, Newcastle have been linked with, I think, in excess of over 100 players during this window already. So I'm not really one for getting too much into the headlines and wait for something more concrete to come about, because even if there is solid interest and discussions have been had, there are so many
factors that play.
Yeah, that can come in and influence that, and we've seen that, like I say, going back just to transfers. Players are almost over the line. They've done medicals, but deals can still fall through. So until it happens, then I'll believe it.
Yep. So again, that's all for today. But before you head out, what are your top players we need to monitor for this week's fantasy lineups? So do you have your top players so we can kind of like help our viewers?
Yeah, I think Harry Kane's got to be one that's given some serious consideration. A lot of people talk about the fixture difficulty rating and look at those games that they're coming up in the North London Derby and Manchester City. But, the quality of Harry Kane, I think he has 19 goal involvements in his last 18 appearances. He can transcend all of those. And even though Tottenham haven't been great, Harry Kane keeps on delivering. So he would be my top pick for game week 20.
I wish he scored the penalty in the World Cup, but outside of that, he's a great player. Awesome. Thanks a lot for taking time, Ben, and we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Welcome back to the show, people. Ben Dinnery was awesome. Dr. Atanda and Mills, again, I know you guys missed the interview with Ben. So Ben is the head of Premier Injuries in the UK. He works for The Athletic and kind of a big-time fantasy Premier League savant out there. So he did talked about like all the injuries, which we're going to talk about now, and his kind of like lineups for this week. He likes Harry Kane to start against Arsenal this week. So that was like a interesting thought. So again, everyone check Ben Dinnery out. Again, you can follow him on Twitter. I'll add all the tags and everything should be here in the description as well. Okay.
He is an awesome follow. His content is amazing.
Yes. Okay. So Dr. Atanda, since you're here, you have a little bit energy. Let's start with the Chelsea Football Club. You guys are in the news for every reason possible. Injuries, transfer, paying people like $1 zillion and still keep losing. So let's get started with Chelsea. Your thoughts on all the injuries and the transfer of Joao Felix into the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, starting off with the two big injuries that are more recent, Raheem Sterling with the hamstring injury. And now we've got some recent reports saying Christian Pulisic has what we think is a grade 2, possibly grade 3 MCL sprain of his knee, originally thought to be a calf injury. I mean, those are two big blows. Chelsea, unfortunately, the Blues have been in not the best form as of late, and the injuries keep piling up. I think Joao Felix being inserted to the lineup will be a nice little catalyst to give the guys some life. We'll have to see. As you mentioned, a lot of money has been spent. Graham Potter is in the hot seat, and we'll see. I mean, it's mid-season. Hopefully there aren't any big drastic changes, but we'll see how the next couple of months comes along. But it's not looking the best for them for sure.
Dr. Atanda, with all those injuries, you think they would want to keep people, but once again, talking about the transfer mill, they're thinking about potentially moving Prince Emerick Aubameyang. And
I did hear that. Yep.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's not ideal. Obviously, he's a explosive player. There's a lot of history in the league. I've heard talks of him going to potentially to Barca and other reputable places. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a manager. I don't own a club, so I don't want to judge and place judgment where it doesn't belong. It doesn't look ideal to be sending big name players away. when you're
Mhm.
struggling. Hopefully they have a really good reason for that, though.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, Chelsea play Crystal Palace, so kind of like a layup out there. Hopefully, Felix kind of has some juice and Chelsea wins this week. Mills, let's talk about the big news today. Man City losing to Southampton. How do you feel
Oh,
about how much money? How much more money do you guys need? How many players do you need? Like 5 teams of players? Like, how is Man City doing?
oh my God, man! Man City was in great form, but then I just do not know what happened today against Southampton. We looked like we looked like we were stuck in the mud. We could create minimally no chances. We couldn't get Holland go. We couldn't get Holland going. Like I believe Jack Grealish had he and probably because Jack Grealish he was dealing with some illness. He was dealing with
Hmm.
the illness pretty much, so he maybe wasn't fully fit. And of course, we're still missing Ruben Diaz with the hamstring. He was supposed to be coming back in late January, but now he actually had a setback, so that could be maybe early February. And it was just not it wasn't good top class football as ever used from Man City with someone at the like who someone they should have like walked all over.
Hmm. Well, go ahead, Dr. Ratnada.
I
Sorry
was gonna
about
say,
that.
oh, I don't want to add insult to injury, but that one goal where the keeper was kind of caught in no man's land and
Oh my
he got
God.
chipped. He got
Well,
chipped from it had to be 25, 30 yards out. That wasn't
okay.
that wasn't their finest moment for sure.
So Mills, any injury for Man City leading up to the big game this weekend?
No, said no, not really. Said no, not
Okay.
really. Outside of really just Jack Grealish and
Okay.
Ruben Diaz, not really. But like Benjamin Mendy, he may miss that game because he has a red card for
Hmm.
disciplinary things. And no, said no, not really. But but Man U is they're still they're relative, but they still have some people who are going to be out for a while. Mason Greenwood it has a red card, so he'll probably be out.
Hmm.
Donny Vanderbeek. Now they believe that
Yes.
he may have an ACL MCL combined injury, so they fear he's lost for the season. Diogo
Hmm.
Dalot is out with a hamstring injury. For some reason, Jadon Sancho, even though he's back at training and he's doing his own individual program, he still lacks fitness, and now he has a muscular strain, so he's
Hmm.
going to be out for a while. And also,
So,
no one knows what's happening to Axel Tuanzebe because it's still undisclosed.
hmm, so Dr. Ratanda, like, I
Yeah,
presume you looked into Donny Van de Beek, and our Dr. Har just did a video on him as well.
sure.
Is this like a carrier injury he's going to face, MCL and ACL, if that happens?
It's definitely a season-ending injury, of course. If it is a what we call a quote-unquote multi-leg knee or multiple ligaments in the knee damaged, at this kind of high elite level, that's obviously surgery. That's 9-ish, if not 12 months out, depending. I don't have the full MRI report in front of me, but just looking at the highlights and the replays, you can see that kind of posterior directed force to his knee with a planted foot. Somebody hitting on his tibia is not ideal by any means. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a career-ending injury. I mean, others have come back from serious and more serious type injuries, but it's
Hmm.
definitely threatening the next year or so to
Okay.
probably get him back into
Yeah.
pre-injury form.
Well, hope speedy recovery for him. By the way, the Manchester Derby, like you mentioned, Mills, I think it's going to be the biggest game of the week. Of course, there are like a couple of other big games, but I'm super excited. I still think Man City is fully loaded. I don't
Yeah.
see Man United kind of winning here, but let's see. The other big game this weekend. Oh my God! I think this game is going to be another derby, London derby. Tottenham play Arsenal,
Arsenal, yeah.
and Ben Dinnery loves Harry Kane, and I think he kind of like prefers Tottenham out here. What do you guys? Mills, let's start with the injuries before we get into the game. Arsenal, Tottenham. Any main injuries out there?
Arsenal is pretty fit. They just have the two injuries that you probably have heard of. Reece Nelson, he's still out. He's still out with They said it's a knock, but he's going to be out for a few days. You know, Gabriel Jesus still rehabbing from
Yeah,
the MCL he suffered in the World
World Cup.
Cup, and Tottenham. Sitting Tottenham, I really haven't heard anything. Dejan Kulusevski, he has a muscular strain, so he probably missed one out. Richarlison is still out with that hamstring strain, and also Rodrigo Bentancur, he has a muscular injury, and he'll be out for a few days.
Okay, Dr. Atana, your take on the Tottenham Arsenal game. Who do you prefer out here? Your fellow London buddies?
I mean, Arsenal's they've been in great form. Obviously, they sit at top of the table. They're 11 points clear of Tottenham in fifth place. I mean, just going with the odds and statistics, you would assume Arsenal wouldn't drop points or at least be able to get a draw out of this one. Harry Kane, as you know, is ever potent and ever lethal. And if he's in form and playing to his game, anything can happen. But I'm going to lean towards Arsenal on this one. I tend to be very conservative with my picks and not really go against the grain, but we'll see what happens.
I think Arsenal's hitting kind of like a downturn out here. They drew against Newcastle last week, which was a good game, but they should have beaten Newcastle.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be another step back for Arsenal. Arsenal had a hot start, and I don't think the World Cup break is going to help them either. So talking about Newcastle, Mills' third team. Mills. So Newcastle play Fulham. Fulham is in the top 10 again. Another top 10 matchup. Any injury updates on Newcastle and Fulham?
Newcastle's relatively fit. Of course, you know Jojo Shelby. He actually has a calf and a knee injury. He's going to be out until February. And I believe their fullback Matthew Targert. He has a foot injury. Now they say it's a foot sprain, but we need more information to come on that. And he said Newcastle and Fulham, and Shane Dully for Fulham. He has an illness. He'll probably be out for today. And Neskins Cabano, their key midfielder, he pulls the strings there. He has Achilles tendonitis. He's out for a while.
So what is Achilles tendonitis, and how does that translate in a soccer way, Dr. Atanda?
I mean, your Achilles tendon, obviously tendons connect muscles to bones, and your Achilles tendon connects your large gastrocnemius muscle or your calf muscle to your heel bone or your calcaneus. And basically anything you do where you're kind of pushing your ankle down, think of it like when you're pressing on the gas pedal in the car, we call that plantar flexion. And that's one of the chief strength and power motions of your Achilles tendon. Anybody who's trying to explode or accelerate or jump, which is things all soccer players at a high elite level do, if you have a problem with your Achilles, it can be very, very troublesome. It can be nagging. It can limit your explosiveness. It can make you slow, and it can even rupture. I mean, David Beckham had an Achilles tendon rupture several years ago that a lot of people heard about, and that's a good 12-month recovery if that's the case. Achilles tendonitis doesn't keep you out nearly that long, but it slows you down while you're still playing, and it's hard to get back in form when you're dealing with that for sure.
So does tendonitis have like grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, or like how do we quantify
not
that?
so much. Tendonitis is more of inflammation within the sheath around the tendons. Tendons live in kind of like a tunnel we call a sheath. Sometimes fluid builds up with that inflammation. Tendinopathy is a different term that we use, but that's more of a problem of the tendon tissue itself, whereas tendonitis is the tissue that surrounds it. So we don't typically grade it the way we grade muscle tears and tendon tears and ligament tears. But it's more of kind of a clinical subjective call where it's mild, moderate, severe, that sort of thing. A lot of it is going to depend on how the player feels and how much it's bothering them.
Okay, fine. Well, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. Liverpool lost to Brentford last week, which was like 3-1. I think that was like a pretty good upset. It was not like a fluky win for Brentford. Are they dealing with any injuries, Mills, or is it more of like a one-off upset for Liverpool out here?
Liverpool they really haven't had A lot of injuries, but but more recently they've been dealing with, of course, Virgil van Dijk. He's
Yeah.
going to be out with
Mhm.
a hamstring injury. James Milner is still out with a hamstring injury. Robert Firmino actually just went out with a muscle knock, so he'll miss a couple of days. Diogo Jota has the calf injury. Of course, Luis Diaz still dealing with the knee injury, and also Arthur has a Brazilian. He has a thigh muscular strain, but with that said, they were just on the back foot immediately after Ibrahima Konate gave up that own goal
Mhm.
with
That
the
was brutal.
19th minute, and then after that, I mean, they had 6 more shots, they had
Mhm.
4 more corners, and they had 73% possession. What did they do with it? Nothing.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think it happens. Like maybe like an unlucky day as well for them. So, Dr. Atanda, I know you made a video on Virgil van Dijk. Any other updates on him, or is it kind of status quo right now?
Yeah, not that I know of. I mean, Jurgen Klopp's press conference, he was a bit nebulous about things. I mean, he pulled them off preemptively at
Ooh, I like
halftime.
that word,
Actually.
nebulous.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that! Some GRE words coming out here.
I
Keep
know.
going.
That's my SAT words for the day. He didn't give a whole lot of details. He pulled him out at halftime. It wasn't a particular on-field incident, and he was expecting a couple of weeks. But after consulting with the medical staff, they deemed it be more, at least a month or two. I haven't heard anything more than that, but I'm assuming it's a grade 2/grade 3 injury. If they're already predicting a couple of months for him.
Yeah, that's awesome. So another top 10 matchup for Liverpool this week. They play Brighton. So I think it's going to be a close game. I think Liverpool's going to win this game. A lot of great matchups this week. Any upset predictions, Dr. Atanda, this week?
I'm looking at my list here. Not a whole lot of obvious ones. If I had to bet, which I don't typically do, but I'd probably bet against my guys in blue for Chelsea. They have a matchup with Fulham tomorrow, but I was leaning more towards the matchup on Sunday against Crystal Palace. I'm thinking they may actually get upset. They're only 2 spots apart in the table, so being in poor form, severe injuries, having some issues and tension in the managerial role, I think Crystal Palace may be able to squeak one out.
Okay. Mills?
Yep, that was exactly my pick because Crystal Palace is coming in very fit. They just have Tyrick Mitchell. He's going to miss that game with a red card. James MacArthur is still out with that hip flexor strain, and also Nathan Ferguson has the muscle strain. And they're close to returning to training, but they're coming in with a fully fit squad.
Mhm.
Chelsea, it's not a question of who is injured, who isn't injured on Chelsea
Yeah.
right now. They have 10 people on
Well,
the injury report.
I get that, but I'm all about the feel guy. And I think Felix coming into the team, I think he's going to start this week. I think it's just the emotional aspect. I feel Chelsea is going to win this game. My upset for the week is not too much of an upset. I think Tottenham's going to beat Arsenal. I think it's gonna happen. I think Harry
That
Kane's
wouldn't
probably
even
going
really
to.
be much of an upset because they're
I know,
still
I know.
top
That's
top
what I
five.
said.
They're 1-5.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, Arsenal's sitting in top of the table. Let's be
Yeah.
clear out here. They're in a I don't know. I think it's going to be a downturn for them. So let's see. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining. We are TFT Football. Subscribe to the channel. As always, Dr. Atanda keeps putting out amazing injury videos every day.
Oh
Check
yeah.
out us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts. See you guys next week. This is the Money League.